So much of feedback is about the relationship, the way that it's being received, the way it's being delivered. But really what matters most is how the conversation's being held, humans being more human. What does that mean? What does it mean actually being more human? To be able to hold capacity for another person, to be able to be excited about both their challenges and their breakdowns. Listen beyond the language and the words. Listen into what's not being said, and then believe. Believe in yourself, believe in your client, believe in the creative potential of your clients and yourself. People are hard, community's hard. It's fun and wonderful and fulfilling and delicious and challenging sometimes. And if you can let all that be there, not get thrown by the drama that ensues and the big feelings and lots of opinions, and they don't hesitate to share their point of view. A community can't be too self-organizing or it won't be able to find its way. But if it's totally legislated, it can't be alive and sort of dynamic. As technology enters our field and as we are talking about artificial intelligence, coaching will always be a tool for human beings to be more effective human beings together in relationship.
Very, very excited for this episode of the Breakout Room around the heart of coaching, what changes and what endures. Paul Byrne, welcome to the Breakout Room.
Betsy, pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
are excited for today.
And a favorite topic, I think, for both of us.
Like in all of the things I do in my role, when I open my calendar and I see a bunch of coaching calls in a day, I'm like, oh, this is going to be such a great day. So I feel like that even today when I opened it, and I was like, ooh, the heart of coaching, this is going to be a good conversation.
Yeah. Well, I had a coaching week this week. So we're recording this on a Friday. And I had probably 3, I wouldn't call them full, but pretty full days of coaching. And I have a tendency to look at a week like that on Monday and think, ooh, that's a lot. And then as I go and progress through it, I sort of fall in love with the process again.
I know.
And the people that you're coaching and their story and where they're at. And, you get so proud of the successes they have and you sort of hold them through it. But, our guest today, so we're going to bring someone into the breakout room who's had no small hand in shaping not just coaching in general, but the industry and how coaches get trained. And so more of that to come. But I'm wondering, as you think about some of the coaching you've done lately, Betsy, what's coming up in the conversations? How are you approaching it? Are you doing anything differently than you have?
It's interesting. So I was thinking about our guest and some questions that I would have for the guest. And one of the questions that I was thinking about was, do you have like a favorite coaching moment or a favorite person you ever coached? And I thought, if somebody asked me that question, I would say, I genuinely love every single leader I have coached. For all of their differences and similarities, each one is like, oh my gosh, I'm just totally in love with this person. I love what they're going through. I love the way they're thinking through it. I love being here in this moment with them. For me, this particular moment with some of the volatility and complexity in the market is really interesting. And some of my leaders are it has them. So they're kind of being strung around by this. And what I've even noticed in the last 2 weeks and have so enjoyed as the level of volatility has gotten higher. So it's like bad thing happens, good thing happens, they've kind of started to even out. And what I noticed this week in some of my coaching calls is people were like, well, stuff's going to happen, I guess. What's really important is how I approach it. And so it's like they leveled out. And that to me has been absolutely fantastic. How about you? What are you noticing in your week of coaching?
Well, there's two. First, I just want to notice what you just said, which is, I think, the sort of falling in love with your clients, and I think we don't often, I think as insiders, as when we're talking to each other, we use that word a lot. I don't know that we use it necessarily with clients or in positioning the work we do, but it sort of had me reflect on what differentiates a conversation with an actual human being and a conversation with a large language model that possesses all of the combined knowledge of all human beings have ever existed, which is clearly surpassing mine. And there's something, I think there's something in what you said, which is just what's the energy you meet people with and what's the space that gets held. And I don't want to pretend that I know where all of the technology is going, but at least as I see it so far, it's quite good transactionally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm working on executive presence, or I'm working on giving better feedback. Can you give me a model? Can you give me
Mm-hmm.
a way to do that with my team? And it'll give you some great suggestions. I think it's fantastic, actually. But it's sort of in those moments where leaders kind of feel stuck,
Mm-hmm.
or they're just trying to deal with complexity. And in a sense, they just need someone to meet them there
Yeah.
and also kind of tell them it's normal. It's fine. Don't worry. Like
Right.
you and
Right.
everyone else in the world,
Yes.
it is not just you.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of the leaders that I've worked with this week, one of the there's been two dynamics. One is in this moment of ambiguity and lots of change, the subtle need for more direction,
Mm-hmm.
more clarity, and I think
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of these leaders, they've spent so much of the last couple of years practicing how do you step back, how do you empower teams, how do you give them more space, and they're starting to notice that at a certain moment, direction
Mm-hmm.
has its value. And we've talked earlier about polarities. And so there's direct and
Mm-hmm.
power. So I think
Yes.
a lot of them are in that and trying to find sort of the right place. The other question that's come up a lot is feedback and
Mm-hmm.
the lack of
Yeah.
in organizations. I was doing a debrief of the Leadership Circle profile this week. And what I started to realize was the organization that we were working with, they were sort of using it as their primary feedback vehicle.
Mm.
And I was like, no, 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 no. Do not use psychographic assessments that happen about every
Yeah.
year as your
Right.
primary way of giving each other feedback and input that actually you need kind of in the moment. And so a lot
Mm.
of the conversations have been around how do you bring feedback in? How do you
Mm-hmm.
get teams doing it as opposed to just individual leaders trying it? And then
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking a lot about there's so much emphasis on the skill of giving feedback and sort of
Mm-hmm.
courageous feedback. And it had me reflect on the idea of, well, what's the art and the skill of receiving feedback? Because I
Mm-hmm.
think for most people, myself included, you'll get feedback and you'll say, well, thank you. But I don't have like a developmental framework to put that in. Like,
Yeah.
how do I take what you said and you were willing to tell me about a meeting I was just in and somehow connect that to some bigger developmental
Mm.
work that I'm doing, where it's
Mm-hmm.
not just sort of an anecdote and a story that either confirms or disproves
Mm-hmm.
sort of my own inner story, but that
Yeah.
actually it's fuel for my development. And I don't think we've put enough attention on how people receive feedback. I think there's a lot around, how you give it.
That is so interesting. Two things that brings up for me. A dear friend of mine, Kristen Senden, who was a college gymnast, had watched one of our episodes and she called me and it was about
Mm,
feedback. And she said, as an elite athlete, I got really comfortable with getting feedback after every single thing I did. Every single thing. Like floor pass, you get judged. Beam routine, your coach tells you exactly what you did, right or wrong. And even the beam gives you feedback, you might fall right off. And we were having a conversation around what if leadership gave you that many feedback cues that fast, right?
right.
Every single meeting. And it reminds me of, I think I've shared with you the story. I have a CHRO that I work with, and they had gotten prickly to feedback. Do you know what I mean? Like every time
Mm-hmm.
someone would say like, "Oh, can I give you feedback?" They'd coil and be like,
Yeah.
"Sure, yeah." And so we did this feedback immersion. The plan was to do a 2-week feedback immersion, and it was every meeting for 2 weeks. At the end, you'd end 5 minutes early and say, "Can you give me feedback about my performance in this meeting, or can you give me feedback?" And after 2 days, the CHRO called me and she said, most incredible thing I've ever done. I will never stop. It's not a 2-week thing anymore. I
Yeah.
learned more about what resonated with people and what didn't resonate. I learned stuff about myself I didn't even realize I was doing. Like, you think of your to-do list in the middle of a meeting and all of a sudden you go
Mm-hmm.
off. People think you're thinking something totally different. I found that fascinating. And I
Yeah.
think, the role of coach, going back to this notion of like, what AI can give you in terms of information versus what a coach can give you in terms of learning. It's like if you're just looking for a hero that's going to tell you a model on executive presence or whatever, if you're looking for a hero, there might be applications that you could pull out from a large language model and say, "Hey, give me some thoughts." But if you're looking for someone to sit with you and host your development, host the way in which you take feedback, the way in which you give feedback, the whole way in which you develop, that really can't be done by a large language model. You have to move from hero to host when you're thinking about coaching in that regard.
Someone had, I can't remember where I heard it, but it stuck with me, which was this idea of coaching as accompaniment, sort of
Mm-hmm.
someone who
Yeah.
walks with you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's always struck me. And
Mm-hmm.
then there was this quote that I've seen sort of passed around a little bit on LinkedIn and other places, and it's by a professor, I think, at London School of Economics. It was something to the line of, as machines get better at being machines, humans need to be better at being more human.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I thought about, and also where I think coaching might play a role, because I don't know
Mm-hmm.
that in the machiney part of leadership, like just the tactical execution of strategic planning, and I think I think it's going to get disrupted, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all going to get disrupted. And I think if coaching doesn't think it will, it's naive and blind to it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about how do leaders cultivate the capacity to be even more human than maybe we realize. Because I think that's the differentiator, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to crunch numbers as well
Right.
as
Yeah.
as an LLM. You got to play to your strength. You're a human being. You're a biological system. You might
Yeah.
go with it, right?
Right on. Well, and also the other thing I would just mention, I think the importance right now in the world of deep human connection with one another, and
Yeah.
what, from kind of a polyvagal perspective,
Mm.
connection does somatically to a leader to be able to handle and hold more. We used to talk about our leaders' minds capable of handling the complexity, but it's not mind at all, right? Like, it's your whole
Hmm.
self, it's your whole being, it's your body, it's the way that
Your
your
nervous
body
system.
registers, your
Yeah.
nervous system, everything. So
Yeah.
to me, that's the bigger question. And it sounds like this might be a good time to bring our guest in, because I am just dying to hear her perspective on these things.
Let's do it.
All right.
So let's welcome Karen Kimsey-House to the breakout room.
Woohoo!
There
Hello,
she is.
Wow.
Karen.
What a
Welcome.
welcome.
You had no idea you would land in this breakout room, but aren't you lucky? That was always the idea we had, was how whenever you're on a virtual session and you get sort of thrown into this enter breakout room one, and you just pray to yourself, oh, please let there be someone in there I
And
can
it'd be
have a
somebody
laugh
good.
with. Exactly. So this is a dream breakout room. Karen,
Mm-mm.
lovely to see you. And we've known each other for some time,
Yeah.
and I think Betsy and you are just meeting now. So this
Mhm.
is fun to be
Indeed.
able to introduce you, Betsy, to one of my favorite people in the world. Karen and I have known each other for years. She's been a teacher, a trainer, a friend, many things. And we got to know each other through your role as founder of the Coaches Training Institute. And in many ways, much of what we're calling coaching today had its roots in some of those early experiments that you all were running back in the day, trying to figure out how to help people.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. I haven't had a chance to meet you yet, but my goodness, the breadth of your work and the scale of your impact has touched leaders I work with, teams I work with,
Hmm.
practitioners I work with, friends that I work with, and certainly me as well. So just the deepest gratitude for you being here today. And we just can't wait to hear a little bit about your perspective on coaching.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Betsy. Thank you.
So I have maybe just to start it off, Karen. I had Betsy and I were talking a little bit before you joined us about AI and
Mm.
technology, and what is the uniquely human aspect of coaching? And of course, you've been into this long before. I mean, I think the technology at the time was email. Would
Right.
fax
I
each
think
other
email was kind of
confirmation.
new at the
That
time.
was the new thing. Yeah. How are you? As you look at it across the sort of the range of time of the industry, like what are you noticing now? How's technology changing? What's the opportunity? What do you think doesn't change?
Yeah. Wow. Big question. Um, what I love about the continued expansion of technology, particularly the introduction of AI, is that it really makes the distinction between context and content, between sort of the energy of human connection and the information that we humans use to move forward in the world, it makes that distinction, or has the capacity to make that distinction even more clear. I've always felt like that was a really important distinction. And back in the day, when you didn't even have Google to go look up stuff, it was fuzzier.
Mm,
What's the
Mm.
difference between the information and the relationship? You were talking earlier about feedback, and it really struck me that so much of feedback is about the relationship. It's about the way that it's being received, the way it's being delivered. Sure, it's really good to have real concrete pointing and real specific things to point to, but really what matters most is how the conversation's being held, how it's welcomed and received, how it's offered. And so I think that as coaching moves forward, the more clear we can get about those differences, the stronger what we have to bring as human beings will be. I love what you said earlier about, humans being more human. What does that mean? What does it mean to actually be more human? To be able to hold capacity for another person, to be able to be excited about both their challenges and their breakdowns. I think that could we please keep going deeper and deeper into that forever?
yeah.
Would
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
float my boat.
So, Karen, one of the things I'm really curious about is if you go back to when you were coming up with the idea and co-founding CTI, can you tell us about that initial spark, where the place in which that came from?
Well, we have to realize that that initial spark wasn't enormous. It was sort of, we were sort of going to do some workshops. We thought that would be cool. Uh, we were we were of the human potential movement,
Mm,
and we saw people having all these experiences and then falling away from them, and we wanted to find a structure that would, make it stick.
mm,
And actually, in the beginning, our focus was very much on the the material, the content. We wanted
mm,
to help people manage their to-dos more effectively
mm.
and, be held accountable. And as our work evolved, as and we did as well, we really were able to dive more into the human to human aspect of coaching. We didn't really see that at the beginning.
What's a story you could share with us that for you is somehow reflective of those early days? So, like, that's like, if you want to know how it actually was, let me tell you about this one time. Because I think, there's something about where things, about origin stories. And I know that CTI has many, and I've been lucky enough to hear a few. But I'm curious, as you think about stories that sort of capture the essence of that moment and the birth of coaching, what's one that comes to mind?
I'll tell you how I got involved with CTI before it was CTI. So Laura and Henry, my two co-founders, my husband now, Henry Kimsey-House, and my third co-founder who passed away in 2007, Laura Whitworth. Laura and Henry were doing this little workshop, and they invited me because I was their friend, and who else is going to come because nobody knew who they were. And I had that CTI experience where I was sitting in the room, and I went, "Oh my goodness, this is something I have longed for all my life. This is how I want to work with people." And someone just put a frame around it. I've got to be a part of this. So I took him out to a business lunch at Uno's Pizza. I bought, and I told them that they really needed me, that I knew all about business. I'd had some cereal, I don't know, I had a cleaning business maybe, and I started an adult education company. So I told them they needed me, that if they would let me be a partner, we could really grow this thing. I was really confident that in no time at all, we would be doing one workshop a month.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
said I said this with great conviction. They were impressed. Made me a partner immediately, which I think is just hilarious and kind of cute because,
Over a deep dish pizza.
over a deep dish pizza with a big business lunch.
Yeah.
I mean, in any given weekend, CTI is doing, I don't know what, around the world, 40, 50, 60, 70 courses over a weekend. I had no idea that CTI, or the coaching profession, would go where it went. I was
Mm.
Wow.
naive,
Mm.
does not capture it.
What surprised you about where the profession has gone, or maybe
Yeah.
even where it is
Mhm.
now? Because I know you're still chairman of the board
Uh-huh.
at CTI, so you're still involved at an advisory level, although not running the business. But
Right.
just, yeah, be curious kind of what what your reflections are of where we are now.
Gosh, Paul, it's all been such an adventure. It feels like it surprised me every step of the way. I was surprised that it grew. I was surprised that people were interested. I was surprised that it became a profession. I mean, I continue to be surprised and delighted. Um, Being able to be a part of this unfolding has been the adventure of a lifetime for me. It's been the making of me. So I can't point to one thing. Delight, surprise and delight. Frustration, anxiety, of course, it's been difficult too, but mostly it's just been like, really? Wow.
Oh, that's beautiful. As you spoke about how you got started, and that notion of this is what I've been needing and this is what I've been wanting, like your longing was stalking you. I have a
Mm-hmm.
colleague that used to say that longings stalk you and come
I
and
love
find
that.
you. And when I think about your impact and the number of people that you have connected with that utilize your framework and methodology across the years and across the globe, how does that land on you when you think about 45 programs on any given weekend and all of those leaders working with coaches and all of those coaches doing really incredible things to shift those leaders and then shift the companies that they're in or the communities that they're in? I'd be curious how you hold that.
Well, first of all, I don't think it's about me. I think I got to play, but I think all kinds of different people came. Paul's one of them, you know, and there was a lot of humans who helped lift the blanket of coactive in the world. So that's the first thing. So I feel really connected and in relationship with those many, many people who were created this together. That's the first thing. And the second thing, this particular approach to coaching has a community that spans the globe, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And that blows my mind. I mean, I could go over to the dark side tomorrow and decide I was going to block coactive. I was going to kill the thing. I couldn't do it. It's so far beyond any one person. And that's magical.
You've trained thousands, tens of thousands of people, working with leaders, working with parents, working with teachers. I mean, all kinds of contexts, life coaching or executive coaches. If you could sort of be on the shoulder of a new coach and whisper something in their ear, or just pass on a few pieces of advice that for you, you feel are just central to what it means to hold that space of coaching someone,
Mm.
what would you want all of us to know?
It might sound slightly corny. I'm kind of a corny gal, so listen and believe. So listen beyond the language and the words. Listen into what's not being said. Listen in, Betsy was talking earlier about your longing stalking you. I love that. Listen for your longing.
Mm.
Listen for your client's longing. Listen and then believe. Believe in yourself. Believe in your client. Believe in that longing. Believe in the capacity of us to transcend the challenges that we face and create from them. Believe in the creative potential of your clients and yourself. Those would be two things: listen and believe. Those are things I've recovered to or tried to recover to. What's really trying to happen? What's wanting to happen? Where are we wanting to go? What's the longing that we're sharing, you know? And what is it that I need to give my faith to in the absence of, hard evidence? Because that's how anything new happens, is by putting your faith in something that's unseen.
You know, one of the things that I learned so much from you and from, you know, your colleagues at CTI, but I think one of the bits of wisdom that's come through, and I've really, it's one of the places I recover to, which again might not sound obvious, but it's um, not take it too seriously. And by that I mean be too precious about the model or the process or doing it right. So many leaders are caught in this trap of needing to be right, of not wanting to mess it up, of wanting to do it right, even though you couldn't. I mean, there is no right, right? There's just a next best thing to do, and we hope it was right, and we hope some level of wisdom, you know, comes into the decision. But I always think the last thing a leader needs is a coach who's trying to do it right. It's like their doing it right energy meets your doing it right anxiety, and they just kind of, that's just what dances together. And what I've noticed is when you can meet a leader and in all the seriousness and implications of the choices they make. So I don't minimize it, but it's like I'm perfectly comfortable not knowing where this conversation is going, right? Or really knowing if the next thing I'm about to say is going to be helpful or not. But I also trust that the other person will let me know and they'll redirect me. But that's sort of hold it light, don't take it so seriously, and like have fun with it. I mean, development is kind of it's sort of funny, just the human condition. And I think
Being
that's
human
at
is hilarious in
right.
my
I mean,
opinion.
yeah, at the right moments, I think
I
being
mean, we're
able
all
to
a piece
laugh
of
at
work,
it.
right?
Exactly. At least I am, I think most of us are.
Well, first of all, I think I was thinking earlier about AI. I think it's another distinction between us coaches and AI. We get to fail. We get to not know. We get to be in the mystery together with our clients. Whereas I don't know, AI might be able to like mimic that, but it could never replicate what it is to try to feel your way into an energetic field or what's happening and not know and be in the play and the fun and the adventure of it. And then realize, oh, wow, we were going in the totally wrong direction and turn around and walk the other way together. I don't think that that's something that artificial intelligence will ever be able to replicate the experience of that, the experience of learning and growing from it, the adventure of it, the play of it, as you said. If there were two things that I could, in addition to what I said earlier, I could wave my magic wand and immediately eliminate it, would be looking good and getting it right. Those are death,
Mm.
man. Those kill us. They kill our aliveness. They kill our humanity. They kill our adventure and our play.
Looking good and getting it right.
Looking good and getting it right.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I
I
just love
spent most of my young life just doing my very best to look good and get it right. Get it right, it was boring. It was no fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, the innovative ideas, the sort of the breakout thinking. I mean, I think it almost always happens by, in a sense, not getting it right and then figuring it out together.
Right.
Yeah. I just this week I was talking with a practitioner and he shared the story of Kim Purdy with
Mm,
me and she is a woman who lost her limbs to meningitis and
mm.
became the world snowboard championship or
Wow.
champion. And he was telling me that one of the things she did was she began to see her boundaries, not as boundaries, but as springboards.
Wow.
The boundaries of her leadership became springboards. And when I heard that, I was so taken by the idea that a boundary, which is where you think you're going to fail and not look good and not do it right, that actually that's the moment that you can actually springboard forward into something much bigger. And I can't stop thinking about it since he shared it with me. And that's when you said, not focus on looking good and getting it right. That's immediately what came to my mind is this
Mm.
notion of what if that's actually the place that you springboard as a leader
Mhm.
or as a coach?
When I look back over my career, it's those big failures that really shaped me.
Mm, hmm.
Being successful was great, but man, really doing a face plant and then having to shake myself off and figure out what to create from it, that's really what made the difference.
We have a colleague, Betsy and I, who will often talk about the idea that for many leaders in organizations, they have two jobs. So the first job is looking good and getting it right. The second job is their day job. And when you look at sort of just the energetic cost of literally having to have two jobs, what I've seen leaders be able to sort of put down that first job, or at least make it secondary. I mean, I think there's a reality which is optics are important, and if you're working in a system that values certain things, there's some level of attention to that. But when they can just be less driven by getting it right and looking good, just the amount of freedom it opens up, and just quite frankly, energy to do other value creating things that aren't really about sort of managing people's perceptions and ego and the reality that most people aren't watching anyway, right? So a lot of that energy just goes, you know, on on recruit. So
Well, and so much is projected onto those leadership roles. So much gets projected there, so much expectation, so much uh, admiration, but also limitation. So I love hearing you talk about leaders in that way, in such a loving and human way to help them be with their own imperfection and fallibility and humanity and relax a little bit and not have to just do it brilliantly every single time.
Mm.
Um, I think it breathes life not only into the person, but the organization.
Mhm.
Mm. You know, one of the other questions that I wanted to ask you, and it is a little bit related to coaching, but it's kind of ancillary to it, which is this idea of community.
Hmm.
And how do you hold community? How do you gather community? Um, what are the threads that keep community strong? Because I think one of the attributes of CTI that's been true for decades is it holds community. And it doesn't mean that it's always harmony and there's plenty of drama and like any good community, it's a lot, right? But there is something about that system that holds community that's not personality driven. So there isn't sort of a guru at the center where everything kind of revolves around that individual. I think one of the things that you, Henry, and Laura did uh, really well was distribute authority, you
Hmm.
know, to a large extent in terms of mastery, in terms of other people being able to do it. I mean, I think one of the first things you did that actually led to the leadership program was how do we get more and more people capable of
Hmm.
doing the work as well and then better than we would.
Yeah.
And so just to come back first to community, like what are there's a lot of us are trying to build community. You know, we're online now and it's a little harder. What are some of the things that you've learned about what has community stick and endure
Mhm.
and stay together?
I don't consider myself to be a great, wise person around community, but I love to reflect on it. I think if you have first of all, I think the distinction between alignment and agreement is important. Like if you all have to agree on the particulars, then things can't move forward. If you're deeply aligned around a few core principles, if you can feel a shared passion for something without having to legislate it or vote on it, I think that creates sort of the foundation. And then a very few, three, four simple agreements that everybody holds. Really, really, really simple things. And then on top of that, lots and lots of room for people to do it their own way, to come, to go, to be messy, to be human, to be real. You know, community, people are hard. Community's hard. It's fun and wonderful and fulfilling and delicious and challenging sometime. And if you can let all that be there and not get thrown by the drama that ensues I mean, good Lord, CTI's got the most dramatic communities in the world. People have big feelings and lots of opinions and they don't hesitate to share their point of view. So you got to have room for all that and just let it be a part of being humans together. I think those are some of the keys, to hold a few things really firmly and then the rest really, really lightly.
You've experimented with plenty of like governance structures, and my goodness, in my time of knowing CTI, I think it's been managed by all, you know, every possible configuration of, you know, two people, one people, committees of people, and I don't know that any one was better or worse than the other, but you've certainly practiced a pretty distributed environment of how
it's not
leadership
about the
flows.
it's not about the structure. It really isn't.
Yeah.
A community can't be too self-organizing or it won't be able to find its way. But if it's totally legislated, it can't be alive and sort of dynamic. So if you can keep it really simple, any kind of structure, and then let it sort of take flight, I think that brings the most life. We have communities of leadership. We do this leadership program that you participated in and led, actually, Paul. And we have communities of graduates, a cohort of 24 people who meet together annually for years and years and years because they share alignment around a few simple things and have some simple agreements.
I years ago I had the opportunity with our team to go through the CTI leadership program, and one of the things that is really evident to me, and I just had it happen this week. So my image for me, like my vision image, is a banyan tree. You know, those trees that go out, but their roots come up from the ground and they're big and they have all these things. And I really, for me, that is a grounding image that when I get ungrounded and I think of banyan tree, some days, in my role, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I have so much stuff going on. This is ridiculous. You should pare it down. And I'm like, no, a banyan tree never says that. Banyan tree is like, oh, cool. I'm connecting a new limb to a new root and I'm doing a new thing. So I hold that really dear to me and think about it all the time. And this week I was in a program and a leader came up to me and he had said he had gone through the CTI leadership program. And he was like, so what's your image? And I was like, oh, a banyan tree. And he was like, oh, that's cool. He's like, I'm a Supreme Court justice. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And it was such a neat connection that, we would have never otherwise had. And with you coming on this week, I was like, how amazing, right? That out in the world, these connections are happening all the time. I actually think it's like the fundamental building block of our universe, of our world, that people connect in different ways. And it was a really special moment.
First of all, I love the image of a banyan tree. And then I love the story. It sounds like it was playful.
It was super playful and very fun. And then, I was teaching the program that we were in, but then it was like I kind of had this like secret weapon person there, like, okay, if this gets really confusing, I can turn to him and be like, so you know what I'm talking about, right?
That's
He's
right.
like, yes, I'm there for you.
That's
I'm
excellent.
curious, as you're given all the things that are going on in the world right now, what are some of your thoughts, the things that are capturing your attention? What's a question you're sitting with right now?
Boy, it's a big practice right now to stay grounded and centered. It's really easy to slide off into reaction. So that's a big part of my practice is just recovering. I keep trying to feel my way into what's trying to happen. In the largest sense of the word. Of course, locally, what's trying to happen, but also just for our species. It's an interesting story, this human story. And we don't know the final chapters. It's like a really good adventure novel or a horror story, depending on which perspective you hold. I
Yeah.
choose to hold the former. And I keep trying to feel my way into what is trying to happen and how and what's my part, what's my piece, how do I contribute to that unfolding. Um, I'm retired now, I'm not working, but I still think about what my part is and how I can use myself to serve what's trying to happen. It helps me remember to put my attention on that instead of my hair on
Yeah.
fire, which happens,
Also,
if I watch too much news.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Karen, I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts of kind of the state of coaching, the future of coaching, what you see, and what you would say to coaches that are out there doing the work.
Coaching will always be a tool for human beings to be more effective human beings together in relationship. So as technology enters our field and as we are talking about artificial intelligence, how do we as coaches capture those tools and use them to serve our clients ever more effectively rather than be threatened or afraid of them? Now more than ever, our human to human connection matters. Now more than ever, becoming a better human matters. So now more than ever, coaching is vital and important, and the tools and the lessons of it matter more. So I would really want coaches to both believe in that and rest in that.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for being in the breakout room. Little did you know, you clicked on the breakout room button and you landed right here. Had no idea. You just woke up early in the morning and thought, I will join a breakout room. So we were thrilled to have you. And I know that for anyone who wants to hear more about the story of all that you and your colleagues at the Coactive Training Institute have done, I think coactive.com, probably the easiest place to find out more. And then just a heartfelt appreciation and gratitude and love for all that I've learned. I think I speak for probably many, many Coactive trained coaches who are hopefully watching or listening when we say the impact that you've had on our lives and on the lives of those that we touch. I don't think you could ever possibly imagine how profound that is. So I hope you can find a moment to take that in and let me be a spokesperson for I know what thousands and thousands of people think every day. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Paul. And it was wonderful to meet you, Betsy. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being with you.
Thank you so much for joining the breakout room.